Even when I was young, I felt that I was different and I didn't really fit. I didn't really fit in with the other boys at school or in other situations, other settings. Mostly at school, but also in organized athletics. I physically, I wasn't lean and athletic like boys were. I had intense shame about that and about trying to be in any situation where I would have to change clothes. It was horrible. Just a keen feeling of being insufficient, deficient when it came to that, and being not right, not any language I use, I'm gonna feel like it's. I really hate the phrase. I feel like I hate it so much. Any language that I use, it's going to come out sounding to me like cliche. Didn't feel adequate. Didn't feel worthy. Didn't feel enough. So, and it wasn't that only. It was also, maybe more importantly, personality-wise and emotionally, I was too sensitive and too emotionally responsive, reactive, not just in terms of getting upset, but also responding to beautiful scenery or cute animals in nature documentaries we'd watch in school. All these things had this effect of keeping me timid, keeping me holding back from really fully taking part in much of anything things that were going around me, not really feeling confident like I could step forward and take my place. I never knew when an attack might come of whatever kind, and after a while I just it was a lifelong habit of feeling this sense of fear and inadequacy when it came to taking part in anything, being part of something, like stepping forward and fully being present or expecting that I would be accepted or welcomed. So accepted, right? If there had been more acceptance, if there had been people who did acceptance. What does it mean to accept somebody without judgment, to listen without judgment? And do adult authority figures over children, particularly in a school system, do they know the difference between acceptance without judgment and taking the time to listen to a child, taking the time to get through all the defenses a child might have built up in order to get close enough to really have a better understanding of what's going on in that child's mind and heart and life and reaction to life? The difference between that and, as soon as possible, saying to the child, you have this. You are experiencing that. You are feeling this. You are that. Because the most important thing really is to get the child back into step as quickly as possible. And if the step when I was young had included some kind of teaching about gender identity, what would have happened? There have been several points in my life when I was at my most, when I was vulnerable, because vulnerable is a good thing to be, right? So there have been several points in my life when I was vulnerable, and for various reasons, things were in the way to present a barrier against me declaring a different gender identity. At one point, I was unemployed for over a year, but at the time I had a family, and it was there was not there was plenty online where I spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time on Tumblr, in fact, before I deleted my account. Plenty on there, God knows, to encourage assertion of different gender identities. But there wasn't enough acceptance or support of that sort of thing among the people that I interacted with in my real life to help me muster up the willpower to cross over the barrier and declare a different gender identity. I am very grateful for this. When I was in my 20s, I found out that I could be popular with the ladies. I found out that I could hang out with young women, and I could kind of fit in better with them, and I could be a bit more at ease with them, and most of my friends were young women, and there was an ease to hanging around with and being with young women and just being myself. Maybe I didn't find that it got me a lot of good attention because there was no sometimes there was an element of proto courtship involved, or wish for maybe courtship, but there was never. I've just missed my turn. All right. I do this when I talk and drive, so now you get to actually see what happens when I'm driving along and talking and I miss a turn. Oh boy. Scatterbrain, right? Feminine characteristics of my personality. I might as well jump to that. All right. If I were to try to declare a different gender identity, particularly if I were to try to declare a female gender identity, then it would be encouraged for me to perform all sorts of stereotypical feminine traits. Part of that would probably include starting to modulate my voice. I mean, I have kind of a natural, I don't have as high-pitched a voice as some men do naturally, but it's still not exactly like a really deep rumbling bass. I naturally have sung baritone a lot, but maybe I've stretched my vocal cords out by singing tenor lately. But I'd be encouraged, I'd have incentive and acceptance from a lot of people if I started talking in a softer voice because there's such a variety, or there's such an overlap. If you pay attention to how men and women actually talk, there's not necessarily in voice timbre, because voice timbre is pretty, there's not as much overlap in voice timbre as there is in just the way that people modulate their voices and people talk, and sometimes it might be kind of hard to figure out, if you had a way of masking the voice timbre, whether it's a man or woman talking, because the way that people inflect and modulate their speech, there's a lot of overlap there, and there's other overlaps in various aspects of behavior and body language, which we naturally perceive, and the actual physical objective markers of maleness and femaleness are visible and perceptible through that, so that it is an uphill struggle, and it is hard work for somebody, especially somebody who hasn't gone under the knife and who's just relying on like a different sort of presentation of his or her natural physical body, to try to present and to try to get other people to accept that, no, actually I'm claiming this identity of the opposite gender, of the opposite sex. I'm claiming that as my gender identity, or I'm just, claiming to be non-binary. I'm claiming this other gender identity. I have to really exaggerate. I have to make an exaggerated stereotypical performance of these stereotypical traits. Statistically, I have female personality traits. Big 5 anyway. When I took the Big 5 test, it was pretty interesting to see there are these traits that I have that fall solidly within the statistical range that women get. And I could have used this. I would have had encouragement and acceptance in using this to point to as evidence. See, this isn't just how about my subjective inner feelings. I mean, if I had just said, I feel my lived experience, I feel like this. I mean, that would have been enough for a lot of people. That would have been glad to defend me. But I could have pointed to this, say, this, my personality shows this. There's a scientific evidence. I must have a brain. Am I going to go get a brain scan? Am I going to go through the arduous process of medical testing to try to deal with hypotheses and tests? Why should I do that when I could just declare this? And think back to when I was young and I had mostly women as friends. And there was one particular instance where I was hanging around. It wasn't somebody's house. I guess I have to give some details. It was on campus. There was a tent set up, a tent on BYU campus, because it wasn't the Society for Creative Anachronism exactly. It was some club that was interested in that sort of thing, and they had a tent on campus, and they were going to have somebody in the club was going to stay in the tent overnight on campus. Can you do this? This was 30 years ago, roughly. But I was sort of hanging around, and the president or whatever the club was kind of clearing her throat and kind of letting me know, all right, it's time to get out of here, because it's not appropriate for you to hang around when this is like getting kind of to the time that it's not appropriate for a guy to be continuing to hang around what's becoming a woman's space. And there was something in me that felt affronted and felt, but I'm safe. I'm not going to do anything. I'm kind of one of you. Don't you trust me? Don't you feel safe around me? Don't you see that I'm a lot like you? Like, why are you suddenly getting all standoffish and acting like I'm not somebody safe to keep close to you? I'm glad that I've realized what an effrontery, what a presumption, what an intrusion it would be for me to override the objective physical reality of the biological embodied existence of women, to in subservience, in deference to my purported lived experience and asserted inner feeling or claimed identity, it would be partly a way, it would be partly a message of saying the basis or the definition of womanhood is not biological but social and political. And it could be done, and it is done, as a gesture of solidarity. Look, I'm not like the other guys. In fact, I'm so not like the other guys. I understand. I feel for you in your oppressed existence as this political category of an identity that's oppressed. I feel for you so much. I'm joining you. I'm joining you as not just an ally, but as a member of this identity that's socially constructed, that's political, and I'm joining. Aren't you glad to have me as one of your own? Isn't this better than having another man in the world? Isn't this better for me to join in? And don't you care about my feelings? Don't you care about my struggles, my pain? Don't you care about my inner feeling of who I am? Don't you care about my identity? If it's done in a sort of attitude as if of kindness or solidarity, and if you can get other people to join in and add to this peer pressure, it still doesn't change the fact, the disrespect, the deep disrespect and effrontery of trying to claim suddenly belonging and inclusion and sameness with not just a lived experience. I mean, lived experience, I'm not talking about lived experience as a political buzzword. I'm talking about objective, biologically based, embodied life, embodied existence, as being in a body. I inhabit a body that doesn't look very masculine from the neck down, let's say, and didn't always and that does not give me the right to assert and to ask people to ignore the realities that are under all the fat, under the surface, under all the curves, the realities of hormones, the realities of endocrinology, of everything that factually, objectively make me male and make me a man. And if I haven't been a typical man, if I wasn't a typical boy, if I didn't fit in well, if I didn't feel like I belonged, if I didn't feel like a real boy, like a real man, what else can I say? That does not give me the right to presume and intrude on women by claiming any other kind of gender identity. That doesn't give me the right to even try to pretend like I'm some kind of neither in between, oh yeah, liminal spaces, occupying the space in between. Oh yeah, so special. Like everybody hasn't thought of how neat that is. Like that's such a hot take that I like to that I'm about, neither this nor that, but the space in between, like in between the binaries, in between the. I can see the appeal. I can see how it would maybe seem like not as intrusive to say, okay, well, I'm not going to claim that I'm a woman because I'm obviously not, but since I don't fit in with typical maleness, I guess I'm something else. And I have to work. I'd work really hard to give all these signals to get people to go along with perceiving me as something else. It wouldn't be enough to just be an atypical man who doesn't fit in with the typical masculinity. I'd have to work hard. And then I'd have a reason to complain about having to work so hard. Why can't people just um, why can't everybody else just go along with what's in my inner subjective lived experience, huh? But the thing about it is that, again, if this is seen in terms of political categories, non-binary gender identity is also seen as a political category grouped together habitually, routinely with women. And so it becomes another way to invade. And I think I'm glad that I had the self-awareness to think and reflect on that impulse that I had, and to check myself and to go through the discomfort of realizing that that impulse I had of wanting to get offended that this woman was feeling, didn't want to let me stick around. I was able to hold myself to realizing that I was wrong. I was wrong in feeling that. That feeling that I had, you're not wrong for your feelings. No, but I felt that way because there was something in me that I needed to repent of. I needed to change about myself. That was not right. I was not justified in holding on to that. So I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that I went through that process of repentance. I didn't go talk to a bishop or anything. This is just something interior, something in me of understanding myself and holding myself accountable, not letting myself get away with something that I saw would have been disrespectful, profoundly disrespectful. No matter what motivation I claimed, it would have been profoundly disrespectful to others. And I'm glad that I didn't go through with it.